Okay, so I'm actually redoing this whole thing because I did not remember to export this audio. So basically, Happy New Year, and Death Battle's back. We got 4 episodes already of the new season, and all the, well, not all, half of the original matchups, well, more like 6/10, but one of them I'm keeping because I consider it one of mine. Half of them have already been talked about a lot, so I'm just gonna come up with 5 new original ones and try to shove them into this video, and that's exactly what I did. So first I'm just gonna go ahead and give a quick review of the other seasons, since I already went through the rest of Death Battle here to try to find my top 20. Basically, Bardock vs. Omni-Man, I gave a 3 out of 5. I love Devil Artemis's work, and the musical track was obviously pretty awesome too, but there was some scaling, obviously, that people felt like was whack in order to give Omni-Man the win, so I'm just going to, basically say, yeah, if it's a little too whack, then it's not going to be like a 4 or a 5 out of 5. So I gave it a 3. Then with Joker vs. Giorno, I gave that a 4 out of 5 because there was actually not as much backlash for the episode. It was pretty decent. I enjoyed it, at least, and I literally only saw like maybe one person really make a video going like, why the hell did Death Battle make Giorno lose? And even then, they weren't like being rude about it. Bowser vs. Eggman, 5 out of 5. Absolute cinema. Like, it doesn't matter if there are people who obviously think that Eggman should have won. The way I see it, they both could have won, but just the way the episode was portrayed, like, Bowser deserved the win, especially with the way the story in the battle itself went. Like, I was rooting for Eggman at the start, but the moment there where Bowser Jr. gets his ass kicked and Bowser gets really upset at Metal Sonic was the turning point for me, and I was like, okay, you know what, I'm fine with Bowser winning. He's proven himself to be quite the king. So yeah, I love the episode. I have constantly listened to Game Over, and yeah, I just have fun with it. So I hope that everyone else does too. As for Among Us vs. Fall Guys, I'm going to give that a 4 out of 5. It was pretty alright. I kind of got a tad bit of an emotional beat there too, but otherwise, like, the first half of the fight is not necessarily a fight. Like, it's just the Fall Guys and the Among Us guys having fun, with the exception of course, the Among Us guys getting physically killed. So, but the overall fight just, felt cool when we actually got to the fighting part, and yeah, it was a pretty enjoyable episode. It was funny. I'm hoping that Kratos vs. Asura is going to do very good. I am not going to not wait. I'm not going to not get this video out until after Kratos vs. Asura comes out. That's what I meant to say. So, yeah, hope that it'll be awesome when we see it. But otherwise, though, let me just talk about some original matchups. Starting, of course, with the matchups that I was going to put on this video that ended up not being on this video because, well, it turns out people have talked about it. Maka Alburn versus Chloe Love. 2 scythe wielders whose scythes are people that are capable of bonding with their hosts to gain power. This is one I really thought would work better than Ruby versus Maka because of how their scythes worked, but someone else beat me to talking about it. The only reason this battle is likely not going to happen anytime soon is because Ghost Reaper Girl hasn't had enough material released to give it a shot on Death Battle yet. Stan Smith versus Sterling Archer. 2 spies who are completely terrible people and who have done terrible things to those they are close to. This one just felt right to me given how much these two are more known for how much of an asshole they are than what their spy work has done for them. I think that if this battle did happen, Stan might get the durability argument, given that Archer's body was considered to be in terrible shape by the last season, but Archer has more feats as a spy and is just luckier overall than Stan. Honestly, this could go either way depending on the arguments. Darth Vader versus Virgil. 2 deadbeat dads who were forced into terrifying armor by the big bad of the universe, who had to cut their son's right arm off because they had their own old swords, and who are brought back to the light by the same sons due to their unconditional love and/or unconditional stubbornness. This one just felt right to me, and I figured that Virgil needed another chance on Death Battle. I know that this could possibly be a stomp against Vader, depending on how they view the characters, and Vader is lost enough that he probably deserves a dub, but if this episode is entertaining and it doesn't betray the characters, I'd be all for it. V versus Adam Jensen, two cyborgs from first-person shooter games who go up against mega corporations and deal with near-death experiences that change them. This one was probably too obvious that I shouldn't have considered it for the video originally, but I just really gravitated towards it because it made a lot of sense. As for who wins, an argument can be made for V given cybernetics like the Sandevistan let him to move at incredible speeds, but Adam is more capable of handling cybernetics considering that in his world, he was the model for his ex-girlfriend's project that would push forward the future of cybernetics. Add to that the fact that his cybernetics were improved upon without his knowledge, and I feel like he'd win the fight. Cinderfall vs Tomura Shigaraki, two antagonists with traumatic pasts who have their own agendas, but are ultimately only being used by their masters who gave them power to further their own plans. This one probably won't happen for a while anyways, since they're about to have Shigaraki fight Mahito, but this one just feels more thematic over that matchup. Both characters I disliked when they were first revealed, and while Shigaraki got better over time, Cinder took way too long to get to a point where I found her to be a tolerable antagonist. As for who I think would win, that depends on whether you want to somehow argue that Shigaraki could steal Cinder's semblance, since quirks have a bit of a spiritual component, and semblances are an extension of a person's soul. If Shigaraki could steal Cinder's semblance, but not her magic, since magic is different from semblances, basically the same argument from Deku vs. Asta, aka the most disappointing episode Death Battle has ever produced, then he has a chance. Cinder, however, has better training and knows how to manipulate people. Combine that with how her aura will provide an extra layer of protection against Shigaraki's one-shot techniques like Decay, and I think Cinder would win more times than Shigaraki. However, I don't mind if they do this matchup and find that Shigaraki is more capable of winning. Aside from number 2, which I'm keeping specifically because I know for a fact that I had definitely come up with it first, the rest of these matchups I'm 95% sure I came up with originally. Any matchups that may have been talked about outside of the r/Death Battle matchup subreddit can still be included, but I'll specify if they've been talked about elsewhere. I also decided on a very interesting caveat where I can only use one character per franchise for the whole list. One final warning, but I am spoiling the shit out of everything I talk about. I will flash all potential series I'm talking about on the screen right now so that you are aware of what to expect. With all that out of the way, let's just get right to it. This matchup is probably going to be contested, but because I wanted to be as original as possible, I wanted to come up with something new and interesting. I've never been an active player of side-scrolling adventure games, but my friend gifted me a game that I managed to stream on YouTube on my gaming channel. In the game Nefarious, you play as Crow, an evil genius who kidnaps princesses to fuel his doomsday device, the Doom Howitzer. He has a mechanical arm that can fire grenades ranging from normal to missiles to sticky grenades, and it even has a machine gun on it. He's also equipped with armor that can take the force of his grenades, allowing him to grenade jump, and his armor's got shock absorbers that he uses in the good ending to destroy the Doom Howitzer and save the world. Aside from that, he also has a ton of mechs like the Chekhov's Death Ray, the Punch Bot, and Crow's first mech, which he uses to defeat the heroes and continue his goal of world domination. So for a matchup with Crow, I figured we'd need another side-scrolling protagonist, but maybe because Crow's kidnapping princesses to use their magic for the Doom Howitzer, his opponent should use magic in kind. And I might have found one that already has other people talking about other matchups, but we'll see if people agree if this one will work or not. My number 10 pick is Crow from Nefarious versus Skull from Skull the Hero Slayer. Admittedly, I haven't played this game yet, so that's why this battle, plus a few others here in the bottom 5, are going to be this low. I basically only have simple information about Skull, but I'll do my best to try and give a convincing argument as to why the fight would work. Skull is the surviving member of the Demon King's army, who has to rescue him after mankind captures the Demon King and wipes out the rest of the Demon King's army. To stand a chance, Skull collects many pieces of equipment, inscriptions, and even other skulls to give him more fighting styles and abilities. An interesting parallel that Skull and Crow share is that neither of them specifically see themselves as evil. It may sound weird, but Crow actually has a moment where the player is given a choice to choose a dialogue option for him, where he's asked if he sees himself as a villain, and the choices are somehow no, deflect, and lie, which seems to imply that even though he is a bad guy, he doesn't see himself as evil. As for Skull, he was friends with the Demon King while he was alive, and he was even born as the son of the first hero. When Skull died due to a corrupt knight having him injured and chased away before being slain by another knight, his determination to be a hero saw his skeleton come back to life and under the service of the Demon King, who gave Skull a cape to add to his heroic look. So while Skull is fighting for the guy we'd normally see as the villain, he actually manages to save the world and bring about true peace between humans and monsters, which can help with making this a battle. For a fight dynamic, it would make sense if Skull was either protecting the Demon King from Crow's invasion, or going to Crow directly to rescue the princesses he captures and/or befriends. As for who wins, well, honestly, even though I know very little about Skull's feats, I feel like he might have the advantage in versatility. However, to balance things out, Crow's feat of not only destroying the Doom Howitzer with his armor's shock absorbers, but also surviving the explosion, might give him an edge in power and survivability. Admittedly, the idea of this matchup is weak, but if anyone's played both games and would like to explore this matchup even further, feel free to do so. That's basically what this whole video is for, to try and suggest some new matchups for Death Battle and get people talking. If someone does talk about this matchup, then I've done my job. Even so, Crow was a pretty enjoyable character for me, so I think it'd be cool to see him on Death Battle at some point. Assassin's Creed is a series that I'm surprised hasn't bothered to have some Death Battle representation yet. A lot of people wanted to see some of the older characters on the show, from Ezio to Altair to Edward. A lot of people also want to see Jin Sakai face off against any of the protagonists due to Sucker Punch making Assassin's Creed Japan before Ubisoft did, and doing it without any of the recent controversies and microtransactions. I, however, think that Bayek of Siwa is one of the characters that would work best for Death Battle. Bayek is a former Medjay turned Hidden One, who hunted down the Order of the Ancients after their actions led to the death of his son Kemu. Along the way, he acquired a bunch of weapons, aided many of Egypt's citizens, and even after forming the Hidden Ones, aided in stopping an ancient artifact from wreaking havoc on the city of Thebes. Bayek skilled enough to take on war elephants with just a bow, strong enough to wield massive axes and hammers, and stealthy enough to eliminate enemy fortresses without ever getting caught. Surprisingly, however, I couldn't come up with any good option for this, so I will admit this might not be the best option for either character. But my idea with this matchup is that both characters are from RPGs with arguments over historical accuracy, both have a main mission motivated by revenge, and both come out of their journeys changed men, serving a better purpose. My number 9 pick is Bayek of Siwa versus Henry of Skalitz from Kingdom Come Deliverance. Henry of Skalitz may seem like an odd choice at first, but I think there might be an argument for this to be a matchup. Like Bayek, Henry felt motivated to avenge the murder of his parents and reclaim the sword his father made for Sir Radzig Kobyla, who Henry joins forces with and eventually discovers is his actual biological father. Henry could learn a multitude of skills including smithing, thievery, lockpicking, and even how to be a bard. He can also learn how to wield numerous weapons and wear many different armor types. Unfortunately, I haven't made time to play the game yet, but that will likely change soon enough since I do have the game. As for who wins, obviously for the moment it does feel a little bit more like the stats are better for Bayek, but unlike Bayek, Henry's getting a second game soon, so he has plenty of chances to get better stats. Beyond that, the argument would be about whether Bayek gets any of the special weapons, not from the microtransactions, that are made of more Isu-like materials, and when it comes to armor, Henry's probably got Bayek beat when it comes to armor construction. If anyone's watching this and has played both games and wants to expand upon this matchup, I'd welcome it. It's a matchup that I think has potential, and I'd love to see it explored more. Full disclosure here, but 1, this battle hasn't been talked about on the r/Death Battle Matchups subreddit, but has been talked about on the subreddit for one character, and 2, like Kingdom Come Deliverance, I haven't played the Max Payne games. However, I've watched a few videos analyzing Max, and I think I found a potential matchup for him. Grief is a very powerful force that can make a person do things many would consider to be insane. For Max Payne, he was once on the way to become a family man until tragedy struck. His wife and child were murdered because his wife had found something she shouldn't have, and this sent Max on a path of revenge that saw many corpses being left in his wake. As the story continues, he continues to spiral out of control, pushing away his closest allies and losing more of them to the antagonists he challenged. By the time of Max Payne 3, Max is in a downward spiral, drinking and taking drugs even while taking on his job as a bodyguard to a wealthy family in a different country. However, it was on this assignment that Max found a reason to keep moving forward, and while he wasn't fully successful in completing his job, he did manage to save one of the only friends he had left. By the end of Max Payne 3, Max is on a brighter path as he seems ready to heal. So who would serve as good foil for Max on Death Battle? My number 8 pick is Max Payne versus Aiden Pierce. Aiden Pierce is the original protagonist of the Watch Dogs series. Like Max, Aiden starts off his game almost discovering something terrible enough to get a fixer sent on him. However, instead of taking out Aiden, the fixer named Maurice blew out Aiden's tire and hoped that it would do the job for him. Instead, Lena Pierce died that day, which traumatized Aiden and his nephew Jackson to the point that Jackson would rarely speak. Aiden, meanwhile, began a hunt to find Maurice and track down the man who hired him. which got him into a war with many of Chicago's seedy underbelly. Aiden wasn't exactly the best person to work with, and the two allies he made to help him discover the truth did have to deal with some of his more psychotic moments, but in the end, he managed to discover the truth and punish those responsible. However, his former mentor and ally, Damien, decided to push things too far, and he killed Aiden's ally Clara, who had been responsible for the mob finding out about Aiden's and Damien's hacking attempt. Although Aiden was clearly upset about finding out about Clara's involvement, he did seem willing to forgive her, at least in my opinion, and to stick it to Damien, he revealed the information that got Lena killed to the media. Damien responded in the worst way possible by hacking CTOS and sending to Chicago into a technological apocalypse. In a desperate move, Aiden and his ally T-Bone black out the whole city to reset CTOS and stop Damien from causing more harm. In the end, Aiden succeeds in killing Damien and lives on the run for 17 years, serving out vigilante justice along the way. Eventually, his friend Jordy gets him a gig in London that sees him confront his past as he reconciles with Jackson after the events of the first game pushed Aiden away from his sister and nephew. It's through this event that Aiden meets up with Wrench, a member of the San Francisco branch at DedSec that had rescued him back in 2016, and inadvertently aided the unhacker in stopping a billionaire from abusing his tech. Aiden came back from this a changed man, and even joined up with the London branch at DedSec to help free the city from control of Albion and discover the identity of Zero Day. Now, obviously, since I haven't played Max Payne but have played Watch Dogs, my bias for Aiden is going to influence my opinion on who wins. Not only do Aiden's hacks make him capable of changing the environment of the fight, but Aiden's also good at analyzing people and capitalizing on their weaknesses. Not to say that Max would 100% be deterred by this, especially since I know he's taken on large amounts of enemies able to be considered armies. All I know for certain is that the battle needs to end with both using their bullet time abilities for a final clash. If anyone who's played both series sees this and has a good argument for Max winning, I'm willing to hear it, but for the time I think Aiden would win this fight. So back with my original picture I made for the video, there were two characters from The Legend of Vox Machina. Even though I didn't have a plan for either one of those characters for the video I did come up with, I did think of one to talk about that was discussed on r/who would win. Grog Strongjaw is the Bronze of Vox Machina, a gentle giant capable of going berserk on a whim. While he's not the most intelligent member of the group, he does go through a great character arc where he must discover his reason for fighting and where his strength comes from. And while he does use a vampiric sword that almost leads to the death of his closest friend, that he breaks but loses his strength because of it, he regains his physique when he realizes that his strength comes from his friends and wanting to protect those weaker than him. Grog does manage to get some good gear along the way, including the Titanstone Knuckles, the Belt of Dwarven Kind, and the Blood Axe. Obviously, the best kind of character to face off against Grog needs to be a barbarian, and there's one perfect for this gentle giant to go up against. My number 7 pick is Grog Strongjaw versus the Iron Bull. Like Grog, Bull is a hulking giant with a beard, but he also has large horns and an eye patch. Unlike Grog, however, Iron Bull is more intelligent and a capable leader, having been both a member of the Ben Hastrath and the leader of the Bull's Chargers. As a Reaver, Bull can increase his strength and damage at the cost of losing health over time, but he can take a lot of hits with little trouble and hits back harder in response. And comparing the two in their dragon hunting, Iron Bull probably has the edge there, especially since some of his weapons can be crafted with dragon bone, arguably one of the hardest weapon materials in video games ever. Grog's going to have a slight advantage with the Titanstone Knuckles allowing him to grow his stature, but Bull might have the intelligence to beat Grog in this fight. Overall, it might be fun to see these two giants going up against each other. At the very least, someone ought to make a picture of the two of them having drinks and laughing because they could easily be fast friends. This is another battle that was bound to be talked about regardless, and it was on r/who would win, but there's not a real discussion of it on the Death Battle Matchup subreddit, so I'm also counting it. Yuji Itadori is one of those recent protagonists who seems done, yet somehow has the potential to get stronger at a faster rate. The more popular matchup for him was Denji from Chainsaw Man, but I feel like the relationship between Denji and Pachita is too different from Yuji and Sukuna to make their matchup work. So who would I prefer seeing Yuji fight? My number 6 pick is Yuji Itadori versus Boruto Uzumaki. Both protagonists end up getting bonded to an evil entity that can take control of them under certain circumstances. Both had their worlds turned upside down because of it, both have amazing potential and growth, and both have a mission to save someone they consider a friend or brother who was on a dark path in Megami and Kawaki. Obviously, Boruto could probably be considered more powerful given his genetics give him a crap ton of chakra and how many jutsus he's managed to learn, But end of series Yuji no longer has to worry about Sukuna taking control of him compared to Boruto, who at the current moment in the manga was actively avoiding trying to use his karma mode, possibly because he was worried about Momoshiki taking control. Either way, I think the battle needs to end with Yuji using his domain expansion. Even if Boruto could escape it via flying Raijin, I feel like it could be used for a moment where the two characters talk to each other just before the end of the fight. This could enhance the experience with the two of them finding out how similar they were. If Boruto wins, Yuji could acknowledge that Boruto has struggled and could empathize with him despite their conflict. And if Yuji wins, Boruto could ask him to finish it so that his village would be safe. Either way, I just feel like these two would work better than any other shonen protagonist matchup that's already been discussed out there. One franchise that I know people would love to see on Death Battle is the Darksiders franchise. This series is one that loves to take inspiration from other games, namely God of War, Legend of Zelda, and even Dark Souls, while having mythology stemmed from the Bible. The main protagonists in the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse would do well as combatants on Death Battle. And for my pick for this video, I'm going for War from the original Darksiders. War is a man who lives up to his name. He is a warrior who loves to be in combat, and he has a code that kept him from using his blade on those he deems don't need to die for him to complete his mission. However, he also has been known to go overboard in the heat of battle, and has even injured his family before, losing an arm as a result to his older brother Death, which is why his one arm is just mostly gauntlet. One day, the apocalypse is just randomly kicked off early and War just so happens to stroll in, making him the perfect scapegoat for the true conspirators and the Charred Council, the ones who rule over the Horsemen and who keep the peace between the three kingdoms. Wanting to clear his name and avenge his wounded pride, War undergoes a mission to free a demon named Samael, who can use his power to get him to the Dark Throne and find a destroyer, who had managed to take control of demonkind and bring humanity to extinction. War has managed to come back from death several times in the whole timeline, twice within his main game, and he has an arsenal of weapons and equipment that make traversal and combat a breeze. When trying to come up with a good combatant for him, I had trouble truly nailing down who would be the best. One choice I had come up with was Dante, aka Dino, aka El Dante from DMC Devil May Cry, as both are Nephilim with similar weaponry and abilities. However, most people seem to agree that War's brother Strife would be a better pairing with both versions of Dante. So even though my brother agreed that he would be a better pairing, I'm going to go with my gut and choose to pass over the one that I just like referring to as Neo Dante. Another one I had considered was the Tarnished from Elden Ring. Like War, the Tarnished is one who is no stranger to dying, but they also manage to gain a lot of power through defeating numerous demigods, monsters, and gods, while also being a tool to numerous forces like the Fingers, both 2 and 3 fingers, Ronnie the Witch, and even Mikula tried to recruit the Tarnished to their cause. But there was one character that for whatever reason would always come back to my mind, despite how weird and random this combination is. My number 5 pick is War versus the Fateless One. For those of you who need convincing, the Fateless One from Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning is a being resurrected from their fated death via a device called the Well of Souls. Like War, the Fateless One from Kingdoms of Amalur Reckoning gains access to plenty of powerful equipment during and after defeating powerful foes that conspire to destroy all of mortal kind. They also apparently have had moments in their previous life where they were absolutely ruthless and willing to just stab first and ask questions later. However, after their resurrection, they were more willing to be diplomatic in certain circumstances. What makes the Fateless One special, however, is their ability to manipulate and sever the bonds of fate on the people they fight, bringing an end to several foes that were supposed to succeed in killing hundreds of people according to the Fate Weaver's visions. And just like War, their final boss is a dragon with a connection to their past, as the destroyer was once Abaddon, who fell to darkness after being defeated by Straga, while Tirnoch was the one who slew the Fateless One, knowing that they would be resurrected and would return with the power to free her from her chains. Both ultimately accomplished their goals to defeat the dragons and free themselves from the chains that bind them, with War having Uriel kill him with the Armageddon blade before she resurrected him by destroying the Seventh Seal, and the Fateless One managing to slay Tirnoch and free everyone from the concept of fate. As for who wins this fight, depends on whether or not Death Battle, or perhaps anyone who can power scale, can determine if War can resist the effects of the Fateless One's Reckoning mode, aka their ability to sever the fates of those they fight. The dialogue might be the only tricky part of this fight, since, similar to Chosen Undead vs. Dragonborn, you have a protagonist with no speaking lines going up against a protagonist with one of Liam O'Brien's most badass vocal performances of his career. There wouldn't be much room for banter in that kind of scenario, but then again, War himself also chooses to keep the things he says as short as possible, so that would work out well for the battle to be silent for most of the fight. The only question would be whether or not War should use the Abyssal armor, as it changes its design significantly, as well as what armor set the Fateless One would be in and what ultimate weapons they would use in their fight. Overall, though, it would definitely be an interesting battle, and while it's not high on my need-to-see list, I would love to see people who have been discussions for it. I will be honest, trying to come up with original combinations after finding out most of the others weren't original is terrible. I don't know if my brain is just over-focused on one thing at a time that it makes me forget about certain things I could be thinking about, or if it's any factor, just like lack of sleep, walking to my workplace in 90-degree weather in the summer, or if my brain is just getting forgetful overall in my elder age. That last one's a joke because I'm 30, but I always joke that I'm so old. But a character that I'm surprised just hasn't been talked about at all in r/death battle matchups is Lord Grimm from the King's Avatar. Now granted, I forget the name of what the Chinese refer to their anime efforts as, but I remember hearing about this series being called a ripoff of Sword Art Online by the pedantic romantic. Spoiler alert, but that title is incorrect. The King's Avatar isn't an isekai, but more like a slice of life with the major focus being on esports. The main character, Yeju, or maybe it's Xu Ye, if you just, do the whole thing of having last name first and first name last, I don't know. Anyways, he was once considered to be the best player in the game, but after his management team decided to bench him and replace him with some new up-and-coming star, he found himself forced to retire and start from scratch. However, in the Game of Glory, there was a class type that no one would ever think to use, the Unspecialized. Under the name Lord Grimm, or sometimes Stolord? I don't know, they gave him a second name, I guess. Anyways, this unspecialized protagonist would stun players with his jack-of-all-trades style, finding newbies with potential and building them up so that they could become pros on a new esports team so the king could regain his throne. Armed with a specialized tool known as the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella, a weapon capable of acting as a spear, a shield, a gun, a staff, and even a sword, Lord Grimm would go to dominate the servers and eventually lead to his return to the esports scene for one more season to prove to the world that he has the glory. The one obvious issue with the Unspecialized class is that it follows the old mantra, Jack of all trades, master of none. But with Lord Grimm's skills, he's capable of using the class to its full effectiveness. For a matchup, Kirito may sound like the most obvious choice for it, but when it comes to overall randomness, it doesn't really add up all that much. Instead, I have someone who I know for a fact has been talked about on matchups, but who might also work for Lord Grimm. My number 4 pick is Lord Grimm versus Maple. This matchup may not seem like a good pairing at first, but what I think makes this matchup work is that the two characters are opposites of each other. While Lord Grimm is an unspecialized character used by a player who's a veteran of Glory, Maple from Bofuri is a specialized character meant to focus on defense who also managed to get a ton of random yet OP abilities just from Kaede exploring the game without knowing what she's getting into. It does have some thematic significance, however, because Lord Grimm's main use of his weapon is as a spear, while Maple focuses entirely on her shield. Lord Grimm's attack potency going up against Maple's defense would be perfect to see how their builds hold up. The story of the battle could also be worked into it being some kind of crossover event where two of the best players of Glory and New World Online fight for something like charity, instead of just having a tournament arc that isn't given any context as to why it's happening that somehow feels out of place to make the two characters fight. I think that Lord Grimm might make some respectful comments about Maple's build, but also wouldn't be against trash talk, while Maple would obviously be more aligned with her cute personality and would probably be curious about how Lord Grimm's build works. As for who wins, I personally don't have a clue just yet. I know that Lord Grimm's got an APM feat of having performed 756 actions in the span of a minute, but I don't know how many miles per hour or kilometers per hour that could translate into. Meanwhile, Maple's tanked some ridiculous attacks before, but has had moments where better players managed to find weaknesses to exploit. Either way, if this matchup is done right, I think it'd be a great episode for the show to do. And if anyone who loves to do power scale and stuff decides to take this matchup, do let me know. I'd love to hear other people's opinions on it. Okay, it's actually been quite a bit since I recorded the first dialogue, so I'm just going to go ahead and add this to number 4 here. While it is still going to be number 4, this is actually probably the battle I obsess over the most right now. This is like the one I would absolutely want to work on myself if Death Battle never gave it the time of day. Because, like, it suddenly occurred to me as I was researching them, just in order to make this segment in general, that yeah, there's a lot of similarities between them. And I just want to, I want to make a personal video on that, just going over my points and everything. So right now, like I said in the video, I didn't actually know who would win, but right now my current view is that Lord Grimm has the potential of winning, mainly because of the fact that his main use of the Myriad Manifestation Umbrella is as a spear. If you combine that with his years of experience playing Glory, as well as his character speed, which is probably what, makes the build so special, because he can literally use all the abilities of the 24 classes from the game. Well, all the lower level abilities, I should say, because, he can't really use high-end abilities. But either way, though, he can use, all 120 of the lower level abilities, and that's what makes him so OP. That is what I think would give him the potential to win against Maple, especially since, just going by Maple's health bar, it seems as if, her health bar is just constantly at 40 HP and 12 MP, although I did look it up on both Maple's personal wiki and her Versus Battles wiki page, and yeah, she does get at least a boost to that, so she technically has 70 HP and 22 MP, and also, her shield, her main shield there, also gathers up MP from whatever attacks her Devour skill consumes and stores it away in the shield, so she's pretty much got that in the bag. But everybody else, I think they think that Maple wins because they don't actually know anything about Lord Grimm, so that's why I want to actually go and investigate this, actually try to figure out, speed calcs and, tons of TNT or whatever, all the power scale and stuff, and I'll probably ask for help for that, but I just wanted to let you guys know that, yeah, this is probably the battle I obsess over the most. The top three are still going to be the top three, because, they're the hard sells, or they're the ones that I have definitely wanted to see, and, I didn't want to keep them there, but I'm just letting you know, number 4 now is actually, yeah, it's a really good reason for it for being number 4, because this is the one I want to see the most. Before I continue, I just want to give a disclaimer about the top 3. Number 3, I've seen someone put this on a matchup tier list, but there's no visible post about it on the r/deathbattle matchup subreddit. Number 2 does have posts, but like I mentioned, I still want it on this video because I was one of, if not the first person to suggest this matchup. And number 1 is, well, you'll understand why this matchup is going to be controversial when we get to it. All 3 of these, however, are matchups that I think could work if Death Battle did them right. The problem from number 3 and number 1 is going to be selling you guys on it. What would you do to achieve your dreams? Would you be willing to work hard and press forward to attain them, even when you have no chance? Or would you take every possible shortcut and push yourself to the edge? More importantly, would you ultimately determine that the dreams of your friends and loved ones were more important than your own? I hope you guys realize at least one of the characters I'm talking about right now. But before I continue, I have to make a very important and very annoying tangent to help explain the first character. If you didn't watch my first Death Battle video talking about my top 20 favorite Death Battles, you would know that I dedicated a large chunk of the video to explaining my disappointment with Deku versus Asta. To keep things simple this time around, the episode has me thinking that the best case scenario is that Death Battle were in such a hurry to get Gogeta versus Vegito made that they kept the penultimate episode simplified to get it done faster, but that the worst case scenario is that Death Battle hated this matchup, hated at least one of, if not both of the combatants, and shown both characters in a very unfavorable light. Although the analysis seemed to do okay with Deku, his overall portrayal in the episode made him look weak and stupid. As for Asta, not only was the analysis something closer to bullying, with their need to call him a dumb gremlin jock who wouldn't stop yelling, but the feats they used were either joke feats that didn't really show off the best he had, or were misconstrued to be something they weren't, such as Patri's Arrows of Judgment attack being called a vaporization technique, when it's actually more like a shower of blades you see Virgil or Morgoth drop on their enemies. In the battle itself, Asta was also portrayed as more of a monstrous individual, given how he decided to brutally impale Deku's fresh corpse, yes, you heard right, after Deku's final attack had somehow killed Deku himself. And that's just the problems with the episode, because the fandoms only further put fuel in the fire, which if Death Battle truly did hate even one of the characters, it ended up turning people away from both series as a result. And after My Hero Academia ended, it really hammered in the point that the MHA fandom is nothing more than a bunch of children with the way they handled their reactions to the ending. But despite all of that, I want to see Deku return to Death Battle. Not Asta though, because Death Battle is just going to continue to ruin his image, and I can't trust that they will give him a good showing, even if it's against a character he would win against. What makes Deku my choice for number 3 is that he has a character flaw that I think works for potential matchups. His overwhelming selflessness and how it made him sacrifice a lot once the secret of One for All was made known to the public. Regardless of your opinion of My Hero Academia's war arc and the Vigilante arc, it showed just how far Deku is willing to push himself to save the world from All for One and Shigaraki's influence. And at the end of the day, Deku even sacrificed having his quirk just to defeat them and perform a punch with just the embers of One for All that managed to parallel All Might's signature punch from the beginning of the series. When All Might punched the sludge villain, he started a rainstorm. When Deku performed his final smash, he split the clouds with such a force that a weather broadcast over the United States confirmed that a storm that was supposed to hit them didn't, implying that Deku punched with enough force that it changed the weather from even further than Japan. I've seen people argue it's planetary, and I said in my video it had to be at least continental, but regardless, it's a much better feat that also proves that Deku wouldn't have gone out the way he did in the Death Battle prior. Gone Freaks is obviously the character everyone wants to see him fight the most, especially since now Deku's sacrifice of his quirk mirrors Gon's sacrifice of his Nen for the power to absolutely destroy Pido, but I have the challenge of coming up with an original matchup, so I can't just go for Deku versus Gon. Instead, we have someone who is arguably weaker in the stats for this matchup, but whose sacrifice is greater in return, which would at least make this a more thematic matchup. My number 3 pick is Izuku Midoriya versus David Martinez. Going to the questions I posed before introducing Deku, David is one who, in a way, took shortcuts in order to get the strength that he possesses for this fight. In David's world, he had lost everything and was left with no choice but to upgrade himself with cybernetics in order to find a place for himself in the world, starting with the Sandevistan his mother had swiped from Lieutenant Colonel James Norris after his cyberpsychosis incident leading to his death. David grew up believing he had been destined for something greater, and rolling with Maine's crew led him to becoming fast friends and obtaining more cyberware to make him stronger and faster. But Night City is known for destroying lives. So one by one, David's friends were killed off, and eventually David found himself coming to grips with cyberpsychosis. In the end, while he failed to save everyone and died finding out he wasn't special in the least, his sacrifice did allow him to give Lucy a chance to fulfill her own dreams and go to the moon. Just as Deku is capable of using multiple quirks thanks to the vestiges of the past users living within One for All, David's got access to multiple cybernetics that give him an edge in combat. His Sandevistan, for example, allows him to slow down time around him while allowing himself to move at what's perceived to be incredible speeds. His gorilla arms increase his strength, his fortified ankles increase his jump height, his projectile launch system and his M10AF Lexington give him options at range, and he had his lungs replaced with Sin lungs to help with his breathing. However, in order for David to stand a chance against Deku, he'll also need the Cyber Skeleton to give him a hand, especially since it can let him affect gravity enough to cascade asphalt, and give him even more hands to fire even more guns. I know that the My Hero fandom is probably going to call this a stomp, but I chose it specifically because of how their journeys are both mirrored and yet totally different from each other. Yes, Deku started off the series quirkless and ended it quirkless, but he managed to gain a lot from his experience so much that he's got a respectable position as a teacher at UA High School, while David lost his mother and therefore chose to drop out and make his own destiny, only to lose more of his friends and very nearly his mind trying to save Lucy. Deku lost his power, but he still overcame his opponent. David lost his connection to his humanity and lost everything as a result. Deku wasn't born special, but was given the chance to become special in his own way. David was always told he was special, only to have Atom Smasher prove he wasn't special at all. And if this does become a death battle, they need to do something more akin to Magneto vs. Tetsuo rather than Deku vs. Asta. Let Izuku and David show their emotional sides, and have Deku decide he needs to save David by doing the one thing he knows a hero shouldn't do. And if David somehow wins, have him snap back to reality by realizing that he overreacted, lost control, and killed someone trying to save him as a result. This might not be my number 1 pick, but is the one I thought over tirelessly to truly find why I thought it would be a good battle. What better matchup to have on Death Battle than to have two people willing to sacrifice their dreams, if it means saving the people most important to them? If I haven't convinced you with this one, then it's fine. I think it's a battle that could work, but I know there are matchups that could be argued have more weight overall to them. Even so, if Deku did get a redemption episode from Death Battle, then Izuku Midoriya versus David Martinez is the one I nominate for it. I'm not going to beat around the bush with this one. My number 2 pick is Sombra versus Kasumi Goto. Back when I first started watching Death Battle, this was the matchup I would always comment about. Both ladies are infiltrators, thieves, and hackers that use a small submachine gun and a tactical cloak as their main gear. Both were known to have cooperated with, if not outright worked for, organizations with a dark reputation, Talon and Cerberus respectively. And both have more comedic personalities that either clash with their teammates or make their adventures more humorous. Sombra's additional gear includes a translocator, which can be used to get her out of tricky situations, and her EMP and hacking abilities are capable of temporarily stopping one from using their abilities. Meanwhile, Kasumi's got a few other abilities between Mass Effect 2 and 3 that she can use, including her Overload ability, which can potentially be upgraded to Neural Shock her opponents, Flashbang Grenade, a holographic decoy, and she even managed to learn how to apply Garrus' armor-piercing ammo on her weapons. I could see an argument for either of them winning the fight, but it's a battle I think absolutely needs to happen because of how perfect it is. For the longest time, this was my most wanted matchup out there, but one matchup came to mind one day that dethroned this matchup and put it in number 2. Before we go over number 1, I wanted to go over some other matchups that either people out there have already suggested, or just ideas that I had that I didn't feel like including. Simon Henriksen versus Tyler Scott, 2 protagonists from conversion mods who have to fight through monsters to meet someone who messaged them. This is a matchup I don't want to spoil the stories of just because I think they're that good, but if you do want to know the connection, just look up Pyrocynical on YouTube and he'll do the spoiling for you. Simon technically has the better equipment given his weapons are more modern compared to Tyler's weapons, but Tyler is more skilled and can utilize items that he finds in the environment to craft new weapons and items to use in battle, so Tyler will probably win. Geralt versus Talion, 2 swordsmen with magical abilities who face off against armies and monsters. I used to really like this one, but after giving it time I don't know if I want to see it, so I don't talk about it anymore. Ken Kaneki versus Eren Yeager, 2 protagonists who live in a world where they hate monsters, only to become the monsters they hate. I know I was one of the people who would spam comments on wanting to see this combo all the time in the early days of Death Battle, but it's become too big of a matchup idea to even consider suggesting for this video. Uzi from Murderbots vs. Oster from Black Clover, 2 protagonists who were short outcasts bullied by those of their societies, are capable of learning how to use weapons pretty quickly, who have limbs corrupted by beings that are bonded to them in a way, and who possess powers considered to be evil that they use for good. Shout out to Cormac113 on Reddit for promoting this matchup idea. Now while I don't want to see Asta in Death Battle ever again after his first appearance, I will admit that this matchup does interest me in a small way. That's why I chose to bring it up here. The Mandalorian versus the Courier. 2 normal people in their respective universes get dragged into something bigger than themselves and going into battle with a ton of fuck-off weaponry and equipment. I honestly don't know why this is such a huge matchup people wanted to see, but it's interesting nonetheless. Megami Fushiguro versus Noct Faust. 2 shadow users who serve as characters that help the main character grow, have multiple techniques based off of curses/devils they summon, and who take many L's in their battles. This is a fight that could be argued to be close, but given that Megami has Maharaga and could have access to Sukuna's abilities like Yuji does, would make Megami broken. Noct has managed to hold his own against Supreme Devils despite the fact that he knew he was weaker than them, and did ultimately get taken down, and he required someone else to save him, but he can also use 2 Devils' powers at the same time as his shadow magic, which can make the fight more interesting. I was limiting myself to 1 character/franchise per entry, and I just felt more like Yuji vs. Boruto would work, so I wasn't going to include this one. Atom Smasher vs. Frank Corrigan, 2 final boss antagonists who go beyond what a human can be that serve a group considered to be the bad by the people who live in their worlds. This is one that was on the pitched matchups that I keep seeing on the subreddit, and honestly sounds like a fun idea. Starfield protagonist versus Outer Worlds protagonist, 2 spacefaring protagonists that go on journeys they weren't expecting. I've beaten the Outer Worlds but haven't played Starfield yet, but I know this matchup is just basically Dragon Ball 2.0 versus Courier 2.0. This could work as a meme match, but otherwise it's just something that sounds dumb. And some additional points to add to the honorable mentions real quick. Nozel Silva from Black Clover versus Endeavor from My Hero Academia. This is literally the only Black Clover versus My Hero Academia matchup I want to see them do ever again. Because, again, Deku versus Asta, very much disappointed in the result. I really don't like it. This is literally the only one I would even consider. The reason, of course, being that both Endeavor and Nozel are pretty abusive towards a certain member of their family, or certain members in Endeavor's case, because he abused his whole family. And I think that this would just be the closest fight in general, because regardless of whether or not you want to argue that Black Clover power scaling is, you know, massively larger than My Hero Academia power scaling, the fact of the matter is Endeavor has got the element that would actually work best against Nozel, because Nozel's magic, his Mercury magic, is automatically just weak against fire. Add to that the fact that Endeavor, even though he can't really use his flames at max power without obviously pushing past his limits, which he does, his overall willpower is definitely strong. He's got like the stronger constitution, at least compared to his wife and to Davi, who has stronger flames but a weaker constitution, of course. And I mean, like, Nozel, of course, would actually be able to stand somewhat of a chance as well, because Mercury magic, all he would really need to do is just get one good hit onto Endeavor, get the Mercury into his bloodstream. He could probably kill him that way, but... And he also has the ability to, of course, buff himself with his magic, even though it does poison him. At least it's confirmed by his mother. But he has used it, like, to cover up wounds that he received at the end of the first act of Black Clover, and that he even used it to cover himself up when fighting against Asir in the final battle going on in the arc, and in the final arc right now in Black Clover. So yeah, I do think that that would be pretty interesting. I honestly wouldn't care who wins as long as they just do the research, get the characters right, and don't make me fucking hate it. Percy from Critical Role versus Garrus from Mass Effect. Shout out to Sarvis the Buck from r/Death Metal Matchups for actually commenting on my post with the image from the previous video. He was literally the only person to comment, so I'm going to go ahead and take a moment to talk about this battle. This is honestly probably too much of a stomp in Garrus' favor when you consider the fact that Garrus' technology is much more advanced. He's got better shielding in order to protect against kinetic energy, and his weapons are going to probably deal a lot more damage. Not to say that Percy's weapons wouldn't be able to deal damage, because Percy literally creates the most overpowered guns, and if you take into account, like, the deals from the campaign, the stuff that happens in the actual D&D campaign, I mean, Percy apparently did the most damage in a single attack out of all of the of all the characters. It's, like, really interesting to hear about, because, like, somehow he managed to do it. So, not to say that Percy would absolutely lose, but again, Mass Effect has got futuristic technology. The most that Percy would probably be able to do is use his, you know, crap, I'm forgetting the names. I need to get to watching Legend of Vox Machina Season 3, but the Vestiges? Is it the Vestiges? I forget. Either way, though, the magical MacGuffin objects from the gods that they're trying to get in order to defeat the dragons. I know he does get a special one that actually works pretty well against, you know, collecting magic or whatever. But either way, though, it might offer him some more protection. But otherwise, I just think Garrus wins. It's kind of a bit too much of a stomp, in my opinion. Yuji Itadori and Sukuna versus Gloria and Ball from Demon Herd. Now, this is honestly just a bit of a joke matchup, and I would not immediately recommend that you check out Demon Herd, only if you're, you know, not of an adult age, like, because I'm not going into spoiler territory or anything, but literally it's not a game that you would see me playing on YouTube. But basically, the whole concept behind the two ideas is that both of them are characters who get possessed by evil. Well, you know, Sukuna was once a person, he became a curse, and then Ball is literally a demon. They both the characters get possessed, both are able to get pretty powerful, whatnot. That's why I think it'd be funny, but again, it's a joke fight, and it'd be very difficult for Death Battle to do so. Just putting that out there. Just to add a couple of extra Part 3 ones, just some other ones that I've been hearing about as of late, and or others that I might have come up with myself. First up, we've got Guts versus Siegfried. Now, like, obviously these two are some of my favorite characters ever. Siegfried is definitely based off of Guts, which would make the fight somewhat believable, but Guts vs. Nightmare already exists, and they haven't bothered to bring back any Soul Calibur characters since Season 2, so just from past experience there with Deku vs. Asta, I'm saying that it's a bias thing. They're not going to bring Soul Calibur back, not unless the fans, like, really demand it, and even then, the only other Soul Calibur battle I can see them doing is Cervantes vs. Spinel, since they did, or Spinal, however you pronounce his name. I'm sorry, I haven't played Killer Instinct, please don't attack me. That's literally the only one I see them actually doing because of the fact that they brought it up in a Death Battle cast. Otherwise, though, yeah, as much as I would love to see Death Battle do it, I don't think they're going to do Siegfried justice. I don't even care if Siegfried loses. I just don't think they're going to do his character any justice. He's going to look like an absolute fool, and they're just going to make Guts look too badass, and it's going to be annoying as hell. So, I'd rather not see them do it. Bringing back Omni-Man for a moment. Omni-Man versus Darth Vader. Why the fuck is this a thing? Like, no, I'm being genuinely serious. I don't understand, other than the fact that, sure, they're evil dads to some really good characters who go through a lot of shit. And they, you know, roll along with some evil empires, but otherwise, why? Why are you trying to bring these two together? You're literally just trying to hand Omni-Man another win at this point. It's kind of the joke. Another one that's been, like, popping around that I think would be really fun is, of course, Metal Sonic versus Perfect Cell. It just sounds like it'd be very interesting. Two androids going up against each other that are meant to become the perfect beings by either absorbing or copying other beings' abilities. So, other beings as well, I guess, in Perfect Cell's case, because he can absorb people. Either way, though, it sounds like an interesting fight. I would totally love to see people do it. And to give Sukuna another mention, now that I think about it, Sukuna versus... oh, fuck, I'm forgetting his name, but basically you're already seeing the thumbnail. It's the Kishin... what's his name? Is it Azura from Soul Eater? Like, everyone's been saying that one recently, too, and that actually kind of sounds like it'd be pretty cool. Alright, we've talked about thematic matchups that made characters willing to give up their dreams to protect those they love, so it only makes sense that I would suggest a matchup where both combatants are willing to sacrifice everyone for their dreams. Griffith is one of the most iconic antagonists in all of anime. He's charismatic, tactical, skilled, intelligent, and driven by one desire: to have his own kingdom. However, one decisive action by a man Griffith may have seen as a friend sent him into a downward spiral. Seeing him be tortured to the point that he would never be able to lift a sword again, let alone claim a kingdom. So when he finds out he was destined to become the fifth angel of darkness, Griffith wastes no time in sacrificing his men to become the being known as Femto. As Femto, Griffith not only regained his previous strength from his appearance during the Golden Age, but likely got even stronger as a result. Besides that, he can summon spirits, or the illusion of people's spirits, to communicate with their loved ones. He's been shown to be incapable of being harmed by basically anything physical, and of course he can bend fucking space. There have been a few different characters people have wanted to see Griffith fight, but the character I want to see him fight is not only one I see as the perfect opponent for him, but I know is going to piss off the Berserk fandom if they do decide to flap their gums in the comments after this. My pick for number one is Griffith versus Lucius Socrates. Lucius is another man who wanted to see the world in his own hands, but his story started off at the bottom as he was born a weak and fragile child with a magic that was the most overpowered type to exist. By making a contract with the Time Devil Astaroth, Lucius gained the strength to be able to carry out his plans, and by using his soul magic, Lucius infiltrated the Clover Kingdom under the identity of Julius Nova Crona. As Julius, he managed to become the Wizard King and attempted to bring the Clover Kingdom to a prosperous and harmonious age, where discrimination is no longer exists. However, while he was successful in some ways, and even helped raise Asta and Yuno up in the ranks in his own small way, it was ultimately all for naught, as Lucius eventually took back control of his body once Lucifero was summoned and defeated. Eating both of Lucifero's hearts after Lucius took a trip to the underworld, Lucius gained gravity magic, which he used to further boost his fortitude and increase his physical prowess in combat. Although Lucifero himself didn't demonstrate just how versatile gravity magic is, Lucius's brother Dante could use gravity magic to create weapons compounded from the earth to defend himself from the Asta's swords, and he too was capable of bending fucking space. By utilizing his own soul magic, Lucius can control people's minds, purify devil magics, heal people, and by borrowing his siblings' corpses, he was capable of creating 13 clones of himself that were just as powerful as him. As Julius, we saw that with time magic, he was able to freeze people in time, use beams that were capable of aging people out of existence, and see into the future with precognition. I ultimately don't care who wins between the two, because as long as it's done right, it would be the perfect episode of Death Battle ever. But obviously there's a few problems. Not only do I know the Berserk fans will never agree to this, and or will likely insult me in the comments in a very elitist way, but Death Battle also made Deku vs. Asta the most disappointing episode in their catalog ever. So why would I put this matchup as number 1 if I know it's going to get this much conflict from me just talking about it? Simple. Because this matchup will never exist. I don't care if that sounds fatalistic, but let's look at the facts. 1. Death Battle has very little experience and or interest in Black Clover, as we saw from how they handled the analysis of Asta back in Deku vs. Asta. They only focused a bit on the feats from the first arc of the series, and only grazed the surface of feats from the second act. Even if you want to use the argument that they just did that to make this fight sound fairer, the fact that they used a feat that is just incorrect to say that the Black Clover universe is stronger than the My Hero Academia universe just showed how lazy and apathetic they are to the series. Second, no matter what, the Berserk fandom is going to be even worse than the My Hero fandom about this, because every single time I have made comparisons between Guts and Asta, which I should honestly update my previous video where I brought up the comparisons, I have received nothing more than elitist behavior from the Berserk fandom. Imagine them going up against the Black Clover fandom, who was also a problem due to their overzealous approach towards explaining the power scaling when Deku vs. Asta was even announced. And third, this video is never going to get the explosion necessary to get people talking about this matchup. If I'm lucky, you will have clicked on this video and gave me a chance. Maybe you like the sound of one of these original matchups, and you start discussing it with me and with other people on the internet. But how many of you will have clicked on this video and even managed to get to this point? Not many, I'm imagining. And even if you have, there's no guarantee you will agree to any of these matchups sounding awesome. You will likely never even comment to say what matchup you want to see, what matchups you liked that I talked about in this video, or even just to be rude about what battles I talked about that you didn't like. And this is just going by what my previous videos on both of my channels have been able to rack up. Sure, I have released videos that got me plenty of views, but not a lot of interactions with it from anyone. That's how sure I am that none of you are going to talk about this matchup. It is what I consider to be the perfect Death Battle matchup, and I am content with it never coming into existence. However, if you guys somehow defy my expectations, either because you really do like the matchup, or because you're stubborn and I bruised your ego calling you out, what would it take for this matchup to be made in the perfect state it deserves? I can think of a few things. 1. It needs to be at a time where Berserk has come to an end. Black Clover is close to its end too, but I feel like Berserk's still not going to be finished for another few years, if not a decade. We know a lot of Griffith's powers and abilities, but I feel like we haven't seen enough of his kit to truly gauge how powerful he is as the 5th Angel of Darkness. Whereas Lucius was more than happy to reveal everything about his power as soon as he arrived. Second, this needs to be a season finale styled episode, and for maximum epicness, it needs to be an army fight. Say that Lucius invades Falconia with an army of Griffith's former comrades, revived and given the purified powers of devils to make them paladins and fight by Lucius' side. Although Griffith is purged of nearly all of his emotions, seeing his men brought back to life to destroy his dream would very likely bring about some anger, making him send his new band of the Hawk Army to destroy the paladins when he handles Lucius. Third, and this is the most important thing Death Battle needs to do, is do the fucking research. And not half-ass this one like you did Deku vs. Asta. If you're going to put Griffith on Death Battle, you can't just put in half the effort for his opponent and call it a day. Even if you find that Lucius would in fact be stronger than Griffith, but want to make the fight sound fairer. Basically, do better than Deku vs. Asta and I'll be happy. I'm not going to say who I think wins this fight, because again, I don't think this battle will ever exist, but even if it became a thing and it's good, then I will be the happiest fan of Death Battle ever. And if it never exists, then I won't be disappointed, because I'd rather it never exists at all than to be so poorly made it makes me drop Death Battle. Okay, so this is like the 4th time I've recorded, because I accidentally forgot to not render the 3rd recording, which fucking sucks. But yeah, that should hopefully be good. I'm gonna stop, I'm gonna try to edit this all down, get this uploaded. Just Happy New Year, everyone. Everyone who watches Death Battle, I hope you guys have been having a great time with their return. I also just hope that all of the episodes for 2025 are going to be epic. I don't care who wins, as long as they're done right. And I just hope that everyone else will enjoy whatever Death Battle makes. And as for all the matchups that I mentioned here, if there are any that you guys think would work great, then definitely spread the word around. I think that would help them get some popularity. It would make me feel happy, at least. If there's any matchups that you think would work better than ones I've suggested, just be respectful about sharing your opinion in the comments. Don't be like, nah, this won't work because you're a fucking dumbass or anything like that. That would just be rude and terrible, and don't be a troll, okay? Either way though, if you guys have enjoyed this, definitely go ahead and give this video a like, maybe share it around with your friends. You don't have to subscribe if you don't want to, but, you know, subscription is always pretty nice to see from people. And, you know, I just hope you guys had fun. So, see ya.